Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for this lesson on planes of movement. For this lesson, the Yoga Anatomy Coloring Book has a really nice section on planes of movement that I'd like you to look at either before, during, or after this lesson. That's going to start on page 16. Some really nice areas for you to color there, and also some descriptions of poses that are seen in those particular movements. So what we'll get started with this lesson, I'm actually going to be using PowerPoint slides more because I think with planes of movement, visuals are particularly helpful, and these slides can kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about, as well as some example postures. One thing that I would encourage you to do throughout this video is to take a pause with each slide, so pausing the video and then going through some of the postures that the slide lists to get a sense again for which plane of movement your body's moving in, just to help solidify some of these different concepts. So without further ado, I will go ahead and share my screen, bring these slides up, and we'll go through them together. Alrighty, so talking about planes of movement here. This initial or first plane of movement is called the sagittal plane of movement. This plane of movement divides the body into left and right halves. So the movement actually takes place in this plane. If you can imagine this person who is basically has kind of this glass pane splitting their body into half, this person to move in that plane would be doing a lot of forward bends, backward bends, those kinds of things. So some examples you'll see pop up on the right here. And what I'd recommend is after all of these examples come up, to go ahead and just pause your video and go through these movements yourself to get a sense for how it really, how these postures occur in the sagittal plane of movement. Forward fold, chair, garland or malasana, staff pose, mountain pose, upward bow, and camel. So go ahead and take a pause if you'd like, go through some of these postures and see how throughout the postures the right and left halves of the body really stay in more or less the same position. Once you're done, just join us back here so we can talk about the frontal plane of movement. So for the frontal plane of movement, this divides the body into back and front. So again, thinking about movements that occur within that pane or plane, and really imagining that if you were looking at an outline of the body from the front or the back, it would look the same with these postures. This is going to be side bends, for example. So certain postures, mountain is another one that actually uses the frontal plane. Five-pointed star, triangle, warrior two, extended side angle, and gate pose. The important thing about these planes of movement to realize is that any given posture might have more than one plane of movement involved, as you see in this case of mountain pose. So again, feel free to take a pause, move through some of these postures to solidify this idea of the frontal plane of movement. The next plane that we're going to talk about is the transverse plane. This divides the body into a top and a bottom, or other terms that we use to describe that is superior, above, or inferior, below. Twists are going to be the ones that incorporate the transverse plane of movement the most. Examples again include seated twist, revolved triangle, revolved side angle, and Marici's pose. So take a minute again to just gently practice some of these poses and see how this twist really separate the lower half of the body and the upper half of the body. Once you've done that, we're just going to do a quick quiz here. All right, so you've got 6 postures here. Again, remember that different postures can incorporate multiple planes of the body, but in this case, we're going to go through each one. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to think about which plane is involved in the posture that we're focusing on, and then I'll go ahead and tell you the answer. All right, so let's do the upper left hand. You've got somebody doing a warrior two. So just take a few seconds and think about what plane of movement might be involved with this posture? All right. So you may have had a moment to think about it. This is going to be your frontal plane, the plane that separates the front and the back of the body. Let's go ahead to the upper right-hand corner. Take a minute. Let me know what you think which planes of movement might be involved in this forward fold. All right, so this is going to be your sagittal plane of movement primarily. Next one is mountain pose. Go ahead and take a minute to think about which plane or planes of movement are primarily involved in mountain pose. All right, you may have answered frontal or sagittal or both, and those are both correct. Next is Marici's pose. This involves mainly the transverse plane. Next is a revolved triangle. This also mostly involves the transverse plane. And last is an extended side angle. And this is mostly frontal plane. All right, I hope that was helpful. Again, take a look at your yoga anatomy coloring book, practice these poses over and over again, and take care.